Every hour is an opportunity to improve yourself. Most people don't realize how much power they give away every single hour. Not in big moments, but in small ones. The hour after waking up, the hour after lunch, the hour before sleep. These hours decide your life more than any big plan ever will. Think about this for a second. How many times have you said, "I'll start tomorrow," or "I'll fix it later," and then the hour passed? Nothing changed. Not because you're lazy, not because you don't care, but because no one taught you how powerful 1 hour really is. You don't change your life in a single decision. You change it in the next 60 minutes. In how you react when something annoys you, in whether you stay distracted or refocus, in whether you quit mentally or reset and try again. This isn't about motivation. Motivation fades. This is about awareness. About noticing the moment you're in and choosing to handle it a little better than the last one. What if every hour became a reset button instead of wasted time? What if improvement stopped feeling hard and started feeling normal? Stay with this, because once you understand how to use your hours, your days and your life won't look the same. Chapter 1. Decide again every hour who you are. Every hour you are alive, you are making a decision, even when you think you are not deciding at all. That is how life works. You wake up and the day begins, but the day does not control you unless you hand it over. You are not a victim of the clock. You are the one who answers it. Each hour quietly asks a question, and that question is simple. Who are you choosing to be right now? Most people think life changes with big moments. They wait for a new year, a new job, a new relationship, or a big event. But life is not moved forward by rare events. Life is shaped by small choices made again and again. An hour is small enough to feel harmless, but powerful enough to change a life. When you decide who you are again every hour, you stop drifting and you start directing. Right now you feel something in your body. Maybe tired, maybe alert, maybe distracted, maybe focused. Those feelings are real, but they are not commands. You do not have to obey every feeling that shows up. An hour does not ask how you feel. An hour asks what you will do. You can feel unsure and still act with purpose. You can feel tired and still do one useful thing. That is how identity is built. Not by feeling strong, but by acting with intention. Every hour gives you a clean chance. Not a perfect chance, but a clean one. The past hour is gone. The mistake you made earlier today is finished. The poor choice from this morning cannot follow you into the next hour unless you invite it. That is good news. It means you are never trapped for a whole day. You only have to win the next hour. People often say they want to change their life, but they keep living the same hour again and again. Same habits, same reactions, same excuses. Change does not ask for a full plan right now. Change asks for a new decision. This hour, decide to speak better. Decide to work with care. Decide to stop wasting time on things that drain you. Decide to be calmer than your emotions. Decide to do the small task you have been avoiding. These are not dramatic actions, but they are honest ones. Who you are is not defined by what you say you value. Who you are is defined by what you practice when no one is watching. In 1 hour you reveal your values clearly. How you treat people. How you use time. How you respond to pressure. How you speak to yourself when something goes wrong. These quiet moments build your character more than public success ever will. Many people carry yesterday into today, like a heavy bag. Regret, guilt, anger, disappointment. They replay conversations. They repeat old stories in their mind. That costs energy. It steals focus. The hour does not ask you to carry all that. The hour asks you to decide again. You can say the last hour was not my best, and still choose to be disciplined now. You can admit you were careless earlier, and still choose to be careful now. Growth begins the moment you stop arguing with reality and start choosing better actions. Deciding who you are every hour also means deciding who you are not. You are not the person who quits at the first sign of discomfort. You are not the person who delays simple tasks. You are not the person who blames circumstances for lack of progress. You are not the person who numbs themselves every time pressure appears. These are not personality traits. These are habits, and habits can be replaced 1 hour at a time. Think about how different your life would feel if you treated each hour like a fresh appointment with your future. Not with pressure, not with fear, but with clarity. This hour is a chance to invest. Invest in skill. Invest in health. Invest in focus. Invest in relationships. Invest in self-respect. Investments do not require perfection. They require consistency. There is a quiet confidence that comes from keeping small promises to yourself. When you decide in this hour to read 10 pages, to move your body for 10 minutes, to speak honestly to someone, to clean up one small mess, or to finish one important task, you build trust with yourself. That trust changes how you walk, how you speak, how you show up. Confidence is not loud. It grows from repeated follow-through. The mind often says wait until later. Later feels safer because later does not demand action now. But later is an idea, not a guarantee. The hour you have is real. It has weight. It has consequence. When you delay, you are still deciding. You are deciding to stay the same. When you act, you are deciding to grow. Both are decisions. One moves you forward. The other keeps you stuck. You may feel pressure when you hear this. That pressure does not mean you are failing. It means you care. Care is useful when it leads to action. The goal is not to turn every hour into intense effort. The goal is to turn every hour into conscious living. Sometimes improvement means rest. Sometimes it means stopping. Sometimes it means saying no. Sometimes it means slowing down so you do not make careless choices. Improvement is not always about doing more. It is about doing what matters. Notice how your body feels when you waste an hour. There is a dull feeling, a quiet regret, a sense of missed opportunity. Now notice how your body feels when you use an hour well. There is calm. There is satisfaction. There is peace. Even when the work is hard, there is pride. Your body already knows the difference between drifting and deciding. Every hour you also decide how you speak to yourself. The tone you use matters. Harsh talk does not build discipline. Honest talk does. Saying this matters and I will do my best right now is far more powerful than calling yourself lazy or weak. Growth responds to respect, not punishment. Treat yourself like someone worth improving. People often ask how long change takes. Change begins instantly. Results take time. Identity shifts one decision at a time. If you decide every hour to act like the person you want to become, your future will start to feel familiar before it arrives. That is a powerful feeling. It removes fear. It replaces doubt with direction. You do not need motivation every hour. You need clarity. Motivation rises and falls. Clarity stays steady. When you are clear about who you are choosing to be, it becomes easier to act even when energy is low. Clarity says, this is what I do now. This is how I handle this moment. This is the standard I live by. Think about your standards. Not what you wish for, but what you accept. If you accept distraction, you will get distraction. If you accept poor effort, you will get poor results. If you accept excuses, they will multiply. When you raise your standard for how you use 1 hour, you raise the quality of your life quietly and steadily. Every hour is a vote. A vote for strength or comfort. A vote for growth or delay. A vote for awareness or autopilot. You do not need to win every vote perfectly. You just need to vote more often for the person you respect. Over time, those votes add up. They shape your habits. They shape your reputation with yourself and others. Life does not demand that you change everything today. Life asks that you decide something now. Decide how you will use the next 60 minutes. Decide how you will show up in this conversation. Decide how you will handle this task. Decide how you will respond to stress. These decisions are available to everyone regardless of age, background, or circumstance. When the day ends, you will not remember every detail, but you will feel whether you lived with intention or drifted through it. That feeling carries into tomorrow. Decide again every hour who you are, and you will slowly become someone you trust, someone you respect, and someone your future self will thank. This is not about pressure. This is about power. Quiet, steady, personal power. The power to choose again. The power to reset. The power to act now. The power to grow without waiting. Every hour stands ready. The question is simple and personal. Who will you be in this one? Chapter 2. Interrupt autopilot and choose better behavior. Most people do not ruin their lives with one bad decision. They slowly give control away without noticing. They wake up and move through the day on habit. Same thoughts, same reactions, same patterns. This is not because they are weak. It is because the mind prefers what is familiar. Familiar feels safe even when it is holding you back. Autopilot keeps life predictable, but it also keeps it small. Autopilot shows up quietly. You reach for the phone without thinking. You respond sharply instead of listening. You delay the task that matters and choose something easier. You eat without awareness. You agree when you wanted to say no. None of this feels dramatic in the moment. It feels normal. That is why it is dangerous. What feels normal repeats. What repeats becomes your life. Interrupting autopilot does not require force. It requires awareness. The moment you notice what you are doing while you are doing it, you create space. That space is powerful. In that small pause you regain choice. You are no longer reacting. You are deciding. This is where growth lives, not in motivation but in awareness. Think about how many times a day you act without choosing. You speak because you always speak that way. You avoid because you always avoid. You rush because you always rush. Autopilot keeps you busy but not intentional. Busy days can still be empty days. Intentional moments fill a life with meaning. Choosing better behavior begins with noticing patterns. Patterns are honest. They show you where your life is actually going, not where you hope it goes. Notice when your energy drops. Notice when you get impatient. Notice when you escape into distractions. These moments are not failures. They are signals. Signals asking for a better response. The body often reacts before the mind catches up. Your shoulders tighten. Your breathing shortens. Your jaw clenches. These are signs you are slipping into old reactions. When you notice these signals, you have a chance to slow down. Slowing down is not weakness. It is control. It allows you to respond instead of react. Better behavior is usually simpler than people expect. It is choosing to pause before speaking. It is standing up and moving your body when focus fades. It is taking one deep breath before answering a message. It is returning attention to the task instead of chasing stimulation. These actions look small, but they change the direction of the moment. Autopilot loves comfort. Comfort asks nothing from you. It keeps you entertained, distracted, and passive. Better behavior often feels slightly uncomfortable at first. It asks for effort. It asks for honesty. It asks you to stay present when you would rather escape. Discomfort is not a warning sign. It is often a sign that growth is nearby. Many people believe they need strong willpower to change behavior. Willpower helps, but clarity helps more. When you are clear about why a behavior matters, it becomes easier to choose it. Clarity turns effort into purpose. Purpose fuels consistency. Consistency changes identity. Notice how different your day feels when you act with awareness. There is a sense of control, not rigid control but grounded control. You feel present. You feel capable. Even challenges feel manageable because you are engaged instead of overwhelmed. Awareness brings calm because it removes confusion. Interrupting autopilot also changes how you treat other people. You listen instead of preparing your reply. You notice tone. You choose patience over sharpness. You choose honesty over avoidance. Relationships improve not because others change, but because your responses do. Behavior shapes connection. The mind often tries to justify autopilot. It says this is just how I am. That statement sounds harmless, but it limits growth. You are not fixed. You are practiced. What you practice becomes automatic. Change the practice and the automatic response changes with time. Better behavior does not mean perfect behavior. It means intentional behavior. You will still make mistakes. You will still fall back into old patterns. The difference is how quickly you notice and adjust. Quick awareness shortens the distance between mistake and correction. That distance matters. When you interrupt autopilot, you start living in real time. You experience moments instead of rushing through them. Food tastes better. Conversations feel deeper. Work feels more meaningful. Time feels fuller. Awareness stretches time because you are actually present. Choosing better behavior also builds self-respect. You begin to trust your ability to respond well under pressure. That trust grows quietly. It changes how you see yourself. You no longer feel controlled by impulses or moods. You feel capable of choice. Autopilot often protects old fears. Fear of failure. Fear of judgment. Fear of discomfort. When you interrupt it, you face these fears gently. You realize they are signals, not barriers. They show you where growth is possible. Better behavior is rarely dramatic. It is choosing water instead of another sugary drink. It is turning off notifications for 1 hour. It is finishing the task before checking messages. It is speaking kindly to yourself after a setback. These choices accumulate. They compound. Awareness gives you power in moments that used to control you. Stressful situations no longer own you completely. You feel the stress, but you do not surrender to it. You stay grounded. You act with intention. Life improves when reactions decrease and choices increase. That is the real shift. You stop being pushed by habit and start being guided by values. Values are quiet but strong. They hold you steady when emotions fluctuate. Every interruption of autopilot is a win. Even noticing after the fact is progress. Awareness grows with practice. The more often you notice, the faster you catch yourself next time. This builds momentum. Your future behavior is shaped by what you allow today. Allow distraction and distraction grows. Allow awareness and awareness strengthens. You do not need to overhaul your life. You need to interrupt it often enough to redirect it. There is dignity in choosing better behavior. It reflects respect for your time, your energy, and your potential. You are not here to sleepwalk through your day. You are here to participate in them. Interrupt autopilot and you reclaim authorship of your life. You stop replaying the same scenes and start writing new ones through daily choices. This is how growth becomes real. One moment noticed. One behavior chosen. One day lived with intention. Chapter 3. Pause briefly and ask what helps now. Life moves fast, and most people feel pushed by it rather than guiding it. Pressure comes from schedules, expectations, messages, noise, and unfinished tasks. In that rush, the mind wants quick relief, not wise action. This is where many poor decisions are born, not from bad intent, but from speed. When everything feels urgent, the brain grabs the nearest option. That option is rarely the best one. Pausing briefly sounds simple, but it is one of the strongest skills a person can build. A short pause creates distance between impulse and action. That distance is where clarity lives. Without it, people react from habit, fear, or frustration. With it, people respond from understanding. A pause does not mean stopping your life. It means slowing your reaction just enough to see clearly. One breath, one moment of stillness. That is often all it takes to change the outcome of a situation. The body settles, the mind clears, choices appear. Asking what helps now is a practical question. It brings attention back to the present, not yesterday, not next week, now. This question cuts through noise. It shifts focus from emotion to solution. It does not judge. It does not blame. It simply asks what supports progress in this moment. Most people ask different questions without realizing it. Why is this happening? Why am I like this? Why is life hard? These questions keep the mind spinning. They drain energy. They offer little direction. What helps now moves the mind forward. It points toward action. In stressful moments, emotions rise quickly. The heart beats faster, thoughts race, muscles tighten. In those moments, reacting feels automatic. Pausing interrupts that chain. It tells the nervous system that you are not in danger. Calm returns faster. Control follows. This pause can happen anywhere. Before replying to a message, before eating out of stress, before avoiding a task, before speaking when emotions are high. The situation does not need to change for you to pause. The pause happens inside you. Asking what helps now also reduces overwhelm. Overwhelm often comes from trying to solve everything at once. The mind looks at the whole picture and freezes. This question narrows focus. It brings attention to the next useful step. One step is manageable. One step builds momentum. Helpful actions are often small. Drink water, stand up and stretch. Write one sentence. Take a few slow breaths. Step outside for fresh air. Say no to one distraction. These actions do not feel impressive, but they restore balance. Sometimes what helps now is rest. Pushing through exhaustion often creates more problems. Pausing allows honesty. You notice when you are tired, not lazy. You notice when your body needs care, not criticism. Listening to that signal prevents burnout. At other times, what helps now is effort. The pause reveals that avoidance is costing more energy than action. You see that starting the task will bring relief. The pause removes drama and replaces it with clarity. This question also improves relationships. When emotions rise during conversations, a pause prevents harm. Instead of reacting with sharp words, you pause. You ask what helps now. Often the answer is listening, or softening your tone, or choosing patience. These choices protect connection. Pausing also changes how you handle mistakes. Instead of spiraling into self-criticism, you pause. You ask what helps now. The answer might be learning or correcting, or letting go. This keeps mistakes from defining you. Many people think pausing wastes time. In reality, it saves time. Reacting poorly creates cleanup work. Apologies, explanations, repairs. Pausing prevents those costs. It leads to cleaner actions and fewer regrets. Asking what helps now builds self-awareness. You become familiar with your needs, patterns, and triggers. You notice what restores focus. You learn what drains energy. This knowledge improves future decisions. The pause also builds emotional maturity. You stop being controlled by mood. You acknowledge feelings without obeying them. You allow emotions to pass without letting them decide your actions. This creates inner stability. Life rarely slows down on its own. Waiting for calm conditions is unrealistic. The pause is something you bring with you. It is available in chaos, noise, and pressure. That makes it powerful. This habit strengthens with repetition. At first you remember after reacting. That is still progress. Awareness grows. Over time you catch yourself sooner. The pause becomes natural. It feels like space opening where there used to be urgency. Asking what helps now is also an act of self-respect. It treats you as someone worth caring for. It replaces harsh demands with thoughtful guidance. Growth thrives under respect. This practice also increases confidence. You trust your ability to handle moments wisely. You stop fearing situations because you know you can pause and choose. That confidence reduces anxiety. Helpful actions are not always comfortable. The pause does not guarantee ease. It guarantees honesty. Sometimes what helps now is facing a difficult task. Sometimes it is having a hard conversation. The pause gives you courage because it removes panic. When you live this way, your days feel steadier. You are less pulled by extremes. You recover faster from stress. You stay present. Time feels fuller because you are engaged. Pausing briefly does not change the world around you. It changes how you meet it. That changes everything. You stop rushing through moments and start using them wisely. Asking what helps now brings you back to responsibility, not blame. Responsibility means responsibility. The ability to choose your response. That ability is always available in the pause. This habit builds resilience. When challenges appear, you do not collapse or panic. You pause. You act. Resilience is not toughness. It is flexibility. Over time, this simple question shapes your character. You become calmer, more thoughtful, more effective. You stop reacting to life and start working with it. Every meaningful improvement begins with awareness. Awareness begins with a pause. A brief pause followed by a helpful question can redirect an entire day. You do not need to pause for long. Seconds are enough. The value is not in the length, but in the intention. Choose awareness. Choose clarity. Ask what helps now and listen honestly. Then act on the answer. This is how moments become useful. This is how pressure becomes manageable. This is how growth becomes daily and real. Chapter 4. Strengthen self-trust by keeping small promises. Self-trust is not something that suddenly appears after a big achievement or a dramatic life change. It is built quietly, in ordinary moments, through the smallest actions that most people overlook. Every time you say you will do something and follow through, even when no one is watching, you send a message to yourself, I am reliable. Over time, those messages shape how safe you feel inside your own decisions. When you break promises to yourself, even tiny ones, the opposite happens. You begin to doubt your intentions, your discipline, and your ability to handle responsibility. Strengthening self-trust begins by restoring this inner relationship, and the simplest way to do that is by keeping small promises. A small promise might look insignificant on the surface. It could be waking up 5 minutes earlier, drinking a glass of water, sending one email, or stopping a task when you said you would. These actions may seem too minor to matter, but your mind does not measure promises by size. It measures consistency. Each kept promise becomes evidence that you respect your own word. Each broken promise weakens that evidence. Over time, this pattern teaches your brain whether you are someone who can be trusted or someone whose words are optional. Many people struggle with self-trust because they set expectations that are far bigger than their current capacity. They promise themselves complete transformations, perfect routines, or non-stop motivation. When they fail to meet those unrealistic standards, they interpret it as personal weakness. The problem is not lack of discipline, it is a lack of alignment. Small promises work because they are achievable. They match who you are today, not who you wish you were. When your goals are realistic, following through becomes natural instead of forced. Keeping small promises also creates emotional stability. When you do what you said you would do, your nervous system relaxes. There is less internal tension, less guilt and less mental noise. You stop arguing with yourself about whether you can handle things. This calm builds confidence that feels grounded rather than inflated. It is not the loud confidence that seeks validation, but a quiet certainty that you can depend on yourself when it matters. Another powerful effect of small promises is momentum. When you complete one simple action, it lowers resistance to the next one. Action breeds clarity, not the other way around. Waiting to feel motivated often leads to inaction, but completing a small task generates motivation as a byproduct. Your brain begins to associate effort with reward, not exhaustion. Over time, this changes how you approach challenges. Instead of feeling overwhelmed, you break things down instinctively, trusting that progress comes from manageable steps. Small promises also reshape your self-image. You start to see yourself as someone who follows through, someone who finishes what they start, someone who respects their time and energy. This identity shift is crucial because behavior follows identity. When you believe you are reliable, you naturally act in ways that support that belief. The need for constant self-discipline fades because your actions are now aligned with who you think you are. It is important to understand that keeping small promises does not mean being rigid or harsh with yourself. Life happens, energy fluctuates, circumstances change. Self-trust is not about perfection, it is about honesty. If you cannot keep a promise, the most important thing is to acknowledge it without excuses and adjust your future commitments. This teaches your mind that you are truthful with yourself, even when things do not go as planned. Honesty strengthens trust far more than forced consistency. One of the most damaging habits people develop is casually dismissing promises made to themselves. Saying "I'll do it later" over and over trains the brain to ignore internal commitment. Eventually, motivation drops because your mind no longer believes your intentions mean anything. Rebuilding self-trust requires reversing this pattern. You do that by making fewer promises, not more, and choosing ones you are almost certain you can keep. Success comes from restraint, not ambition. There is also a deep emotional component to self-trust. Many people learned early in life that their needs or boundaries were not respected. As a result, they internalized the belief that their own voice does not matter. Keeping small promises becomes an act of self-respect. It tells the younger part of you that your needs are valid and your intentions deserve attention. This can be profoundly healing, even though the actions themselves seem simple. Over time, the benefits extend beyond productivity. Decision-making becomes easier because you trust your judgment. Anxiety decreases because you are no longer constantly negotiating with yourself. You stop relying so heavily on external validation because you already feel supported internally. When challenges arise, you do not panic as easily. You have proof, built over time, that you can handle discomfort and follow through. Small promises also create boundaries. When you trust yourself, you are more likely to say no to things that drain you and yes to things that align with your value. You stop overcommitting because you respect your limits. This clarity improves relationships, reduces resentment, and protects your energy. People who trust themselves do not need to constantly explain or justify their choices. They move with quiet confidence. The process is slow by design, and that is its strength. Self-trust built quickly can disappear just as fast. Self-trust built through repetition becomes unshakable. Even on difficult days, the foundation remains. You do not lose confidence because you miss one step. You return to the next small promise and continue. This flexibility keeps the system alive rather than fragile. In the end, strengthening self-trust is less about changing who you are and more about proving to yourself that you are already capable. Every small promise kept is a vote in favor of your reliability. Over weeks and months, those votes add up. You stop doubting yourself not because life becomes easier, but because you know you will show up for yourself, regardless. That knowledge becomes a steady anchor, guiding your actions, shaping your confidence, and reminding you that you are someone worth trusting. Chapter 5. Direct your attention instead of following feelings. Most people believe their feelings should lead their actions. When they feel motivated, they move forward. When they feel tired, discouraged, or uncertain, they pause, wait, or retreat. This habit feels natural, but it quietly gives emotions more authority than they deserve. Feelings are real, but they are not reliable leaders. They change with sleep, stress, memories, hormones, and countless invisible triggers. Directing your attention instead of following feelings is how you reclaim control over your behavior, your progress, and ultimately your sense of agency. Attention is a resource. Wherever it goes, energy follows. When attention is scattered or hijacked by emotional reactions, actions become reactive rather than intentional. You may wake up with a clear plan, but a single uncomfortable feeling can derail the entire day. Doubt pulls attention toward fear. Boredom pulls it toward distraction. Frustration pulls it toward avoidance. None of these feelings are problems on their own. The problem begins when attention automatically obeys them. Directing attention means choosing what you focus on, regardless of how you feel in the moment. It does not require suppressing emotions or pretending they do not exist. Instead, it involves acknowledging feelings without letting them dictate the next move. You notice discomfort, then place your attention on the next useful action anyway. This shift may feel subtle, but it changes everything. Behavior becomes guided by intention instead of impulse. Many people confuse emotional intensity with truth. If a feeling is strong, they assume it must be important, but intensity does not equal accuracy. Anxiety can feel urgent while being completely unnecessary. Lack of motivation can feel convincing while having nothing to do with your actual ability. When you follow feelings blindly, you outsource decision-making to a system that was never designed for long-term planning. Emotions evolved to signal immediate conditions, not to build meaningful futures. Attention, on the other hand, is trainable. You can aim it, redirect it, and strengthen it with practice. When you place attention on a task, a thought, or a value, your nervous system begins to organize around that focus. The mind becomes quieter, not because feelings disappear, but because they are no longer center stage. This creates space between sensation and response, which is where choice lives. One of the most powerful outcomes of directing attention is consistency. Feelings fluctuate constantly, but attention can be anchored. When attention is guided by structure rather than mood, actions become predictable. You stop negotiating with yourself every time resistance appears. Instead of asking, "Do I feel like doing this?" you ask, "What deserves my attention right now?" That single question shifts power back into your hands. This approach also reduces mental exhaustion. Constantly monitoring feelings and debating whether to act drains cognitive energy. When attention is directed intentionally, decision fatigue drops. You no longer need to convince yourself each time. You already know where your focus goes. This frees mental bandwidth for creativity, problem solving, and presence. Another important aspect is emotional resilience. When attention follows feelings, negative emotions tend to grow stronger. Fear feeds on focus. Rumination amplifies distress. When attention is redirected toward constructive action, emotions often soften on their own. You are not fighting them. You are simply not feeding them. Over time, this teaches your brain that discomfort does not require immediate escape, which builds tolerance and inner strength. Directing attention also changes your relationship with motivation. Motivation stops being a prerequisite and becomes a result. Action creates momentum, and momentum generates motivation. Waiting to feel ready keeps you stuck. Acting while attention is steady allows motivation to catch up later. This reversal is essential for progress, especially in areas that matter deeply but feel challenging. It is also worth noting that attention shapes identity. What you consistently focus on influences how you see yourself. If attention constantly circles around limitations, mistakes, and fears, identity shrinks. If attention is placed on effort, learning, and forward motion, identity expands. This is not positive thinking. It is selective focus. You choose to invest attention where it creates growth, rather than stagnation. In everyday life, directing attention can be simple. You return focus to your breath. When emotions spike, you focus on completing the next small task, instead of replaying a discouraging thought. You listen fully during a conversation rather than rehearsing worries. These small redirections accumulate. Each one strengthens your ability to stay present and act deliberately. There will be moments when feelings are loud and attention feels difficult to control. This is normal. The goal is not perfect mastery but repeated practice. Each time you notice attention drifting toward unhelpful emotional loops and gently guide it back, you reinforce neural pathways associated with control and clarity. Over time, this becomes more natural, less effortful. Importantly, directing attention does not mean ignoring emotional needs. It means addressing them at the right time and in the right way. Feelings can be processed later through reflection, rest, or conversation. They do not need to dominate every moment. When attention is guided wisely, emotions are integrated rather than overwhelming. As this habit develops, confidence grows quietly. You trust yourself not because emotions are always pleasant, but because you know you can act wisely even when they are not. You stop being controlled by temporary inner weather and start navigating by internal direction. This creates a stable sense of self, one that moves forward regardless of mood. Ultimately, directing your attention instead of following feelings is an act of leadership within your own mind. You are no longer reacting to every internal signal as if it were an emergency. You choose what matters now. That choice, repeated daily, builds discipline without force, calm without avoidance, and progress without constant struggle. Over time, attention becomes your anchor, allowing feelings to pass without pulling you off course, and enabling you to live with intention rather than impulse. Chapter 6. Use discomfort as signal to grow today. Discomfort is usually treated as something to escape. The moment it appears, most people look for relief, distraction, or reassurance. This reaction is understandable, but it quietly trains the mind to associate growth with danger. Discomfort itself is not the enemy. It is information. When understood correctly, it becomes one of the most accurate signals that growth is happening or needs to happen. Learning to use discomfort as a signal rather than a stop sign changes how you approach effort, fear, and personal development. Discomfort often appears when you step outside familiar patterns. The body prefers what it already owes because familiarity feels safe. When you try something new, speak honestly, take responsibility, or push your limits, your nervous system reacts. This reaction does not mean you are doing something wrong. It means you are entering territory that has not yet been mastered. Growth always lives there. If you wait to feel comfortable before moving forward, you remain confined to what you already are. One reason discomfort feels so intense is because it is misunderstood. People often interpret it as proof of inadequacy. A racing heart becomes evidence of weakness. Mental resistance becomes a sign of failure. This interpretation creates unnecessary suffering. Discomfort is not a verdict on your ability, it is a response to uncertainty. When you reframe it as a signal instead of a threat, its power changes. You stop asking, "How do I get rid of this?" and start asking, "What is this pointing me toward?" There are different kinds of discomfort, and learning to recognize them matters. Some discomfort warns of real harm and should be respected, but the discomfort tied to growth has a different quality. It often shows up as hesitation, vulnerability, self-doubt, or effort. It appears when you are about to learn, stretch, or take ownership. This type of discomfort is temporary, even if it feels intense in the moment. Avoiding it keeps you stagnant. Leaning into it expands your capacity. Using discomfort as a signal requires presence. Instead of reacting immediately, you pause and observe it. Where is it in the body? What thoughts accompany it? What situation triggered it? This observation creates distance. You stop being consumed by the sensation and begin to understand it. That understanding gives you choice. You can decide whether the discomfort is guiding you toward growth or warning you away from harm. When you consistently respond to discomfort with curiosity rather than avoidance, confidence grows. You prove to yourself that you can tolerate difficult sensations without collapsing or escaping. This tolerance is a form of strength that does not rely on bravado or denial. It is quiet, grounded, and reliable. You become someone who can stay present under pressure, which is a skill that transfers into every area of life. Discomfort also sharpens self-awareness. It reveals edges you did not know were there. It shows where beliefs are limiting, where habits are rigid, and where fear still has influence. Without discomfort, these areas remain hidden. Comfort keeps blind spots intact. Discomfort exposes them, offering a chance to adjust and evolve. In this way, discomfort becomes a teacher rather than an obstacle. Many people wait for the right time to grow, imagining a future moment when fear will be gone and confidence will appear fully formed. That moment rarely comes. Growth happens now, inside the discomfort you are already feeling. Each time you choose to engage with it rather than flee, you train your mind to associate challenge with capability. Over time, what once felt overwhelming becomes manageable, then familiar. Using discomfort as a signal does not mean forcing yourself relentlessly. Growth is not about constant strain. It is about intentional exposure, followed by recovery. You stretch, rest, reflect, then stretch again. This rhythm prevents burnout and builds resilience. Ignoring recovery turns discomfort into damage. Respecting it turns discomfort into progress. There is also emotional growth hidden inside discomfort. Difficult conversations, honest boundaries, and self-reflection often feel uncomfortable because they threaten old identities. Speaking up may challenge the version of yourself that stayed silent. Rest may challenge the identity built on overworking. Discomfort marks the point where an outdated identity is being replaced by a healthier one. Recognizing this makes the discomfort meaningful rather than random. As you practice this mindset, fear loses its authority. Fear does not disappear, but it stops being the final decision maker. You learn that fear often accompanies important actions, not dangerous ones. This realization changes how you evaluate risk. Instead of asking whether something feels scary, you ask whether it aligns with your values and long-term direction. Discomfort becomes a compass, not a cage. Over time, this approach builds trust in yourself. You know that when discomfort appears, you will listen instead of panic. You will assess instead of avoid. You will act thoughtfully rather than impulsively. This trust creates inner stability. You are no longer dependent on ideal conditions to move forward. You can grow in imperfect, uncertain, and uncomfortable moments. Eventually, discomfort stops being something you dread. It becomes familiar, even welcome, not because it feels good, but because it signals movement. It tells you that you are not stuck, numb, or stagnant. You are engaging with life fully. This perspective transforms struggle into participation and effort into meaning. Using discomfort as a signal to grow today means choosing courage in small, repeated ways. It means leaning into the conversation you want to avoid, attempting the task you doubt yourself about, or sitting with emotions you usually suppress. These choices do not require dramatic acts. They require awareness and willingness. Growth does not announce itself with comfort. It arrives quietly, wrapped in uncertainty and effort. When you learn to recognize discomfort as a sign that you are exactly where development happens, you stop running from it. You step forward with intention. That step, repeated over time, reshapes who you are, not by force, but by alignment with your capacity to grow. Chapter 7. Choose progress over comfort in simple moments. Most change does not come from dramatic decisions or life-altering events. It comes from the quiet choices made in ordinary moments, the ones that seem too small to matter. Comfort often disguises itself as harmless preference, while progress asks for effort that feels unnecessary in the moment. Choosing progress over comfort in simple moments is how growth actually happens, not through intensity, but through consistency. Comfort is appealing because it promises immediate relief. It asks nothing more than staying as you are. Sit a little longer. Scroll a little more. Avoid the difficult thought. Delay the task. These choices rarely feel like mistakes when they happen. They feel reasonable, yet over time they shape habits, identities, and outcomes. Progress, by contrast, often asks for something subtle but uncomfortable, starting when you would rather wait, stopping when you would rather continue, or choosing effort when ease is available. Simple moments are powerful precisely because they repeat. You encounter them dozens of times each day. The decision to get up when the alarm rings, the choice to finish a task instead of abandoning it halfway, the decision to speak clearly instead of staying silent. None of these moments are dramatic, but together they determine direction. Progress is not built in bursts, it is built in patterns. Choosing progress does not mean rejecting comfort entirely. Rest, enjoyment, and ease all have a place. The problem arises when comfort becomes the default response rather than a conscious choice. When every decision is filtered through the question of what feels easiest, growth quietly stalls. Progress requires intention. It asks you to pause and consider what serves you long term, not just what soothes you now. In simple moments, progress often looks unimpressive. It might mean doing one more repetition, writing one more paragraph, or taking a short walk instead of staying sedentary. These actions rarely produce immediate rewards. Their value accumulates slowly, which is why they are easy to dismiss. Comfort offers instant gratification. Progress offers delayed return. Learning to value that delayed return is a skill that reshapes your future. There is also a psychological shift that happens when you repeatedly choose progress. You begin to trust your ability to act in your own best interest, even when it costs effort. This trust builds self-respect. You stop seeing yourself as someone who only moves when conditions are perfect. Instead, you become someone who can act even when conditions are ordinary or slightly uncomfortable. Many people believe progress requires motivation, but simple moments reveal a different truth. Motivation is unreliable because it depends on mood. Progress depends on choice. When you choose progress in small ways, motivation becomes less relevant. You act because it aligns with who you are becoming, not because you feel inspired. This creates stability in behavior, which is far more powerful than bursts of enthusiasm. Comfort often feels neutral, but it has a direction. It tends to pull you back toward familiar patterns, even when those patterns no longer serve you. Progress, on the other hand, gently pushes you forward into unfamiliar territory. That unfamiliarity can feel awkward at first. You may feel slower, less confident, or slightly out of place. This sensation is not a sign that you are failing. It is a sign that you are learning. Simple moments also owe your values. What you consistently choose in small decisions reflects what matters to you more than any declaration. If you choose honesty when it would be easier to avoid, growth happens. If you choose discipline when no one is watching, strength develops. These choices shape character, quietly, without applause or recognition. Another important aspect is momentum. Each time you choose progress, you make the next choice easier. Effort compounds just like comfort does. When progress becomes familiar, it stops feeling heavy. It becomes normal. You no longer experience each effortful action as a battle. It becomes part of how you move through the day. This is how discipline turns into habit. Choosing progress over comfort also builds resilience. You become more comfortable with mild discomfort, effort, and uncertainty. Life inevitably presents challenges that cannot be avoided. When you are used to choosing progress in small ways, you are better prepared to face larger difficulties. You do not panic as easily because you have practiced acting despite discomfort. There is a subtle confidence that grows from this practice. It is not loud or showy. It comes from knowing that you can rely on yourself in ordinary circumstances. You do not need extreme pressure to perform. You show up consistently. That consistency becomes a source of pride that does not depend on external validation. It is important to remember that progress does not require perfection. You will still choose comfort sometimes. That is part of being human. What matters is the overall pattern, not isolated moments. Progress grows when you return to intentional choices again and again, without self-punishment or guilt. Shame undermines growth, awareness supports it. Simple moments also offer frequent opportunities to course correct. You do not need to wait for a new week, a new month, or a new version of yourself. Each moment is a chance to choose differently. This immediacy is empowering. Growth becomes accessible, not something reserved for special occasions. Over time, choosing progress over comfort reshapes your relationship with effort. Effort stops feeling like a burden and starts feeling like participation in your own life. You are no longer waiting passively for change. You are actively contributing to it. One small decision at a time. Eventually, comfort itself changes. What once felt uncomfortable becomes familiar. What once required effort becomes natural. Progress today becomes comfort tomorrow. This is how growth sustains itself. You expand your comfort zone, not by forcing yourself, but by repeatedly stepping just beyond it. Choosing progress in simple moments is not about becoming rigid or joyless. It is about aligning daily actions with long-term well-being. It is about recognizing that small choices matter because they shape direction. When you consistently choose progress, even quietly, life begins to move forward almost without notice. In the end, the most meaningful changes come from these ordinary decisions. They do not demand dramatic willpower. They ask for awareness and honesty. Each time you choose progress over comfort, you reinforce the kind of person you are becoming. That identity, built patiently through simple moments, becomes the foundation for lasting growth. Chapter 8. Reset quickly after mistakes without self-punishment. Mistakes are inevitable whenever you are doing anything that actually matters. Yet for many people, the mistake itself is not what causes the most damage. The real harm comes from what follows: harsh self-talk, lingering guilt, and a cycle of punishment that drains energy and stalls progress. Learning to reset quickly after mistakes without self-punishment is one of the most important skills for sustainable growth, emotional stability, and long-term success. When a mistake happens, the mind often reacts as if something has gone fundamentally wrong with you. A single error becomes proof of incompetence, lack of discipline, or personal failure. This reaction is rarely conscious, but it is powerful. Instead of focusing on correction, attention shifts towards self-judgment. The nervous system enters a defensive state, making it harder to think clearly or take constructive action. Progress slows not because of the mistake, but because of the internal response to it. Self-punishment often masquerades as accountability. People believe that being hard on themselves will prevent future errors. In reality, it usually does the opposite. Harsh criticism creates fear, and fear encourages avoidance. When mistakes are met with punishment, the brain learns that trying is risky. This leads to procrastination, hesitation, and perfectionism. Resetting quickly requires a different approach, one rooted in responsibility without hostility. A reset begins with recognizing that a mistake is innate, not an identity. It is something that happened, not something you are. This distinction is critical. When you separate your sense of self from the error, you preserve your ability to respond effectively. You can look at what went wrong without collapsing into shame. This mental separation creates space for learning rather than defensiveness. Speed matters when resetting. The longer you stay stuck in regret or rumination, the more momentum you lose. Quick resets do not mean ignoring consequences or minimizing impact. They mean addressing what needs to be addressed without unnecessary delay or emotional self-harm. You acknowledge the mistake, extract the lesson, and redirect your attention forward. This process keeps mistakes from expanding beyond their actual size. Another important aspect of resetting quickly is emotional regulation. Strong emotions often follow mistakes, especially when expectations are high. Instead of trying to suppress these emotions or acting them out, you allow them to pass through without giving them control. A few slow breaths, a brief pause, or a short walk can help the nervous system settle. Once emotional intensity decreases, rational thinking returns, making constructive action possible. Self-punishment often feels justified because it gives the illusion of control. Criticizing yourself feels like doing something. In contrast, resetting quickly can feel almost too gentle, as if you are letting yourself off the hook. This belief is misleading. True accountability is not about suffering, it is about correction. Growth happens when you change behavior, not when you prolong pain. Resetting also requires curiosity. Instead of asking, "Why am I like this?" you ask, "What led to this outcome?" This shift in questioning transforms the experience. Curiosity opens the door to insight. You might notice patterns, triggers, or unrealistic expectations that contributed to the mistake. This information is valuable. It allows you to adjust systems, environments, or strategies, so the same error is less likely to repeat. It is also important to recognize that perfection is not the goal. If you expect flawless execution, every mistake will feel catastrophic. Resetting quickly requires accepting that errors are part of any meaningful process. Even improvement itself is uneven. Progress rarely moves in a straight line. When you expect setbacks, they lose their power to derail you emotionally. Another reason self-punishment is harmful is that it narrows attention. When you are focused on feeling bad, you are not focused on moving forward. Energy that could be used for repair or learning is consumed by internal conflict. Resetting redirects that energy toward action. It asks, what is the next useful step, and places attention there. Over time, practicing quick resets builds resilience. You become less afraid of mistakes because you trust your ability to recover. This trust encourages experimentation, learning, and growth. You are more willing to take on challenges because you know that even if something goes wrong, you will not abandon yourself afterward. This sense of internal safety is essential for long-term development. Resetting without punishment also improves self-respect. You treat yourself as someone worth supporting, not someone who needs to be broken into compliance. This does not mean lowering standards. It means maintaining standards while responding humanely when you fall short. High standards paired with self-compassion create sustainable excellence. In daily life, resets can be simple. You miss a deadline and immediately reorganize your schedule. You say something you regret and apologize promptly. You skip a habit and resume it at the next opportunity instead of waiting for a symbolic restart. These small resets prevent mistakes from turning into spirals. There will be moments when the urge to punish yourself feels automatic. This habit often comes from past experiences, where mistakes were met with criticism or withdrawal. Recognizing this pattern allows you to interrupt it. You can remind yourself that punishment is not necessary for improvement. Learning. As this practice deepens, your relationship with failure changes. Failure becomes feedback rather than a verdict. You stop measuring your worth by flawless performance and start measuring it by your willingness to adjust and continue. This mindset keeps you engaged even when things are difficult. Resetting quickly after mistakes, without self-punishment, is not about avoiding responsibility. It is about responding effectively. It is about choosing growth over self-attack, clarity over shame, and movement over stagnation. When you master this skill, mistakes lose their power to define you. They become moments of redirection rather than reasons to stop. Through repeated resets, you build a steady, compassionate discipline that supports progress instead of undermining it. Chapter 9. End each day aware of personal choices. Most days pass quickly, filled with routines, reactions, obligations, and distractions. By the time night arrives, it can feel as though the day simply happened to you rather than being shaped by you. Ending each day aware of your personal choices is how you reclaim ownership over your life, not by judging the day as good or bad, but by understanding how you participated in it. Awareness turns time from something that slips away into something that teaches. Being aware of personal choices does not mean replaying the entire day in detail or criticizing every misstep. It means recognizing that even within constraints, you were making decisions constantly. Some choices were deliberate, others automatic. Some aligned with your values, others came from habit or avoidance. Seeing these differences clearly is what creates growth. Without awareness, patterns repeat blindly. With awareness, patterns become adjustable. Many people end their day consumed by outcomes. They focus on what they completed or failed to complete, how productive they were, or whether they lived up to expectations. While outcomes matter, they do not tell the full story. Two people can achieve the same result through very different choices. One may have acted with intention, the other with pressure or fear. Awareness shifts focus from results to responsibility. It asks not just what happened, but how you showed up. Ending the day with awareness creates emotional closure. Unexamined days tend to bleed into the next, carrying unresolved tension, regret, or mental clutter. When you pause to reflect on your choices, the mind organizes experience. Loose ends feel less chaotic because they are acknowledged. This process reduces anxiety and improves sleep, not because everything is perfect, but because nothing is ignored. Personal choice exists even in moments where options seem limited. You may not control external events, but you control responses, attitudes, and priorities. Recognizing this prevents helplessness. When you notice where you chose patience, honesty, restraint, or effort, you reinforce a sense of agency. When you notice where you avoided, reacted, or disengaged, you gain insight without self-blame. Awareness is neutral. It observes without attacking. Another benefit of ending the day aware of choices is integrity. Integrity is not about perfection, it is about alignment. When your actions match your values more often than not, inner conflict decreases. Reflection reveals where alignment occurred and where it did not. This knowledge informs tomorrow's decisions. You do not need grand resolutions. Small adjustments emerge naturally when awareness is consistent. Many people avoid reflection because they associate it with guilt. They fear seeing their shortcomings. This fear keeps them stuck. Awareness without punishment changes the experience entirely. You are not putting yourself on trial, you are reviewing data. Choices become information rather than evidence of worth. This perspective makes honesty safe and useful. Ending the day with awareness also strengthens self-trust. When you know you will check in with yourself, you act differently throughout the day. Choices feel more intentional because you expect to notice them later. This creates a subtle accountability that does not rely on pressure. You begin to act in ways you respect because you know you will be the one reflecting on them. The process does not need to be long. A few quiet minutes are enough. You might ask yourself what decisions mattered today, where you acted consciously, and where you defaulted to habit. You might notice moments of courage, restraint, or kindness that would otherwise be forgotten. These moments deserve recognition. Awareness is not only about correction, it is also about reinforcement. This practice also builds emotional intelligence. As you observe your choices, you begin to see the emotional states that influence them. You notice how stress shaped your reactions, or how calm improved your clarity. This understanding allows you to prepare better for similar situations in the future. You stop being surprised by your own behavior and start understanding it. Ending the day with awareness creates continuity between days. Life stops feeling like disconnected episodes and starts feeling like a coherent story. Each day informs the next. Lessons carry forward. Effort compounds. This continuity is essential for long-term growth because change rarely happens in isolation. It happens through accumulation. There is also humility in this practice. You accept that you are both capable and imperfect. Some days you choose well, other days you do not. Awareness holds both truths without distortion. This balanced view prevents both arrogance and despair. You remain grounded, realistic, and open to improvement. As awareness deepens, you become more intentional with time. You notice how certain choices drain energy, while others restore it. You begin to prioritize differently, not because of external rules, but because of lived experience. Awareness teaches you what actually works for you, not what should work in theory. Ending the day aware of personal choices also enhances gratitude. When you see your day clearly, you notice moments of effort, connection, and presence that might otherwise be overlooked. Gratitude becomes specific rather than vague. You are grateful not just for circumstances, but for how you engaged with them. Over time, this habit changes how you relate to yourself. You stop feeling like a passive observer of your own life. You recognize yourself as an active participant. Even on difficult days, this recognition preserves dignity. You may not have controlled everything, but you were there, choosing as best you could with what you had. This awareness naturally shapes the next day. You wake up with a clearer sense of direction, not because you planned every detail, but because you understand yourself a little better. Growth becomes less about forcing change and more about refining choices. Ending each day aware of personal choices is a quiet discipline with powerful effects. It does not demand intensity or perfection. It asks for honesty and attention. Through this simple practice, days stop disappearing unnoticed. They become teachers, and as days accumulate with awareness, life itself becomes more intentional, more coherent, and more aligned with who you are becoming. Chapter 10. Repeat improvement hourly until it feels normal. Improvement is often imagined as something dramatic, something you commit to once and then carry out with intensity. In reality, lasting change rarely works that way. Real improvement is quieter, smaller, and far more repetitive. It happens when you make slight adjustments again and again, so frequently that progress stops feeling like effort and starts feeling like your default. Repeating improvement hourly until it feels normal is how growth becomes sustainable instead of exhausting. Most people think in days, weeks, or months. When they think about self-improvement, that scale can feel overwhelming. An entire day feels too big to control, and a single failure can ruin motivation. Hourly improvement changes the scale. It brings growth into the present moment. You are not trying to fix your life or reinvent yourself. You are simply asking what can be improved right now, in this hour, with what you have. An hour is manageable. It is short enough to reset after distraction and long enough to create momentum. When improvement is framed this way, mistakes lose their weight. You do not think, "I ruined the day." You think, "The next hour is still open." This mindset keeps progress alive, even when energy is low or circumstances are imperfect. Repeating improvement hourly does not mean constant productivity or non-stop effort. It means choosing slightly better actions when opportunities arise. It might be correcting posture, refocusing attention, adjusting tone in a conversation, or returning to a task you drifted away from. These changes are subtle, but their frequency gives them power. What is repeated shapes behavior more than what is intense. When improvement is practiced hourly, awareness